Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to do a fresh install of Docassemble on a Microsoft Azure virtual machine. Now, I am not a computer programmer or an engineer. I'm a lawyer and I've got a degree in political science. So what I want to do with this video is I want to show you that Docassemble is really easy to get set up and running, and I'm going to show you a few things that you want to pay attention to, and hopefully I can save you some frustration and hassle by letting you learn from some of the mistakes that I've already made. So what do we need to do to get it installed on a Microsoft Azure account? Well, the first thing you want to do, if you go to the installation documentation, you want to choose where to run Docassemble. For me, I'm running it on Docker. Docker is very easy to get set up, and it's very easy to get Docassemble set up on Docker. Now, what you need to be aware of, though, whenever you do this, you have your desktop machine, which is what you have on your desktop, and your desktop machine then communicates through the cloud through what we're going to do here is an Azure virtual machine, and then on your Azure computer, the file server that you're accessing in the cloud, you're going to have another program called Docker that then is going to run an instance of Python, and then even inside Python, you're going to further segment things down into something called a virtual environment. And so this concept of these different layers, if you will, of where your information is stored and processed and that sort of thing is important to understand in the installation phase of Docassemble. So what you're going to do is, hopefully you've got an account with Microsoft Azure. You create a virtual machine. In this instance, what I did was I just paid, I don't know if that's a good price or not a good price, maybe Amazon Web Services is cheaper, I don't know, but all of my stuff is stored on Azure. All my other Office stuff is stored on Azure, so I wanted to keep things within the Microsoft ecosystem. So I just purchased a one core, 3.5 gigabytes of memory, 50 gigabyte hard drive, virtual machine. It's $57.29 a month according to today's prices, and called it Docker. And I've been running it for a good while now, probably about a month or so, and the CPU usage since I've been running Docassemble has stayed pretty much in the 30% range. Now what you want to do whenever you have created your virtual machine on Microsoft Azure, and it's really easy to do, is you're going to create a virtual machine. And the great thing I think about Microsoft, and I don't know if Amazon does this, but what I like about Microsoft is it allows you to create a virtual machine that's already got Docker installed. So when you look at the actual options for creating the virtual machine, when you go to set everything up, one of the options that you'll be presented with when you go to set this up is do you want to set it up preloaded with software? And so what I chose to do was to set it up preloaded with Docker. Now, what you want to do once you've done that is you want to go into your endpoints and you want to create firewall rules that will allow you to access Docassemble. It'll automatically be created with SSH access, but you want to go ahead and give it access both through TCP and, both through HTTP and HTTPS, which are ports 80 and ports 443. If you wanted to get even more security sensitive, you can change those ports so that port 80 goes to a port 160 or whatever. I'm not, like I said before, I'm not a computer programmer, I'm not a computer engineer, I'm just a lawyer and I just know the basics, and so I'm just keeping things simple with opening up my firewall ports on those. I've created some rules here. I won't go in and show you those because it shows some IP addresses that I don't want to reveal, but it allows me to access Docassemble only from certain IP addresses, so that way I can keep out anyone who's not accessing my Office stuff from IP addresses that aren't allowed in these rules. All right. So at this point, what you've done is create an account with the cloud computing provider. I've got a virtual machine that can run Docassemble. In this case, I'm just a small office practitioner. I don't need anything too incredibly powerful, so I've got it on the smallest machine. Now, Docker's already installed, so now the next step is going to be to go ahead and launch Terminal, since I'm in the Mac, or I could do a Windows PowerShell if I was in Windows. And now at this point, the thing to do is the instructions say to do the Docker run command. What I have found though is you want to run this command with all of the ports that you are going to have open, because Docker is extremely complicated when it comes to your firewall and whatnot. And if you don't know the ins and outs of Linux, if you don't know the ins and outs of configuring a Linux-based firewall, you're better off just doing this right the first time. So we've got terminal open. I'm going to go ahead and SSH into my virtual machine, that's it there. I've already run update, and it's got all the latest versions of everything. It's ready to go. So I am going to go ahead, and I've got my Docker run command here, but what I've done is I've gone ahead and already designated some additional ports that I want to have open on my Docker. It's almost like a virtual machine itself, the Docker program is. So I've gone ahead and opened up those ports because, like I said, it's going to be too hard to go and try and open these ports later. 1433 is for SQL Server. We'll talk about that later, but I've got 443 open for the HTTPS, and port 80, like in the instructions, for HTTP. So, and the problem there is I forgot to type sudo at the beginning. So you want to do that, and I always forget to type sudo. Now, it's going to give you this hash number or hex number or whatever that is, and it's giving you your prompt. However, this does not mean that Docassemble is already installed. The first couple of times I tried to install Docassemble, I followed these instructions and typed in the docker run command, and I got my prompt and thought, okay, it's installed. It takes a long time. Not too terribly long, but it does take a little bit of time to get everything pulled from GitHub and transferred over to your instance of Docker and everything set up and running. What you can do at this point is you can look and see, and this tells you that you've got something called eloquent enough. Docker gives the containers, it gives them these funny names where it combines two words together for the container name. So you can see that it's got that particular container is now being installed. And so what you want to do is you can type, and now you're inside the actual Docker container. So whereas before we started off being on the desktop, then we moved to the Azure virtual machine we created. Now we're in this Docker container that is being set up as we speak, and you don't have to type sudo anymore, because the way it's set up, you're already the root user. So you can type in supervisor ctl status, and there you go. And so you can see Apache isn't running yet. A lot of the processes that you need to be running aren't running yet. And so we need all these things running, or at least most of them running, before you're going to be ready to test anything out. So we're going to pause the video and come back in just a little bit, give it time to set everything up. Okay, so we've given a little bit of time, and hopefully everything is up and running. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here to Terminal, and there you go. You can see the difference here. Now you've got Apache running. Now you've got WebSockets running. So Redis, Postgres. Now that these things are running, I bet we're going to see Docassemble run. So what I've done, whenever you have your virtual machine on Microsoft Azure, it will give you an IP address. I've already gone into my DNS service and got a DNS record for that IP address. And there we go. Docassemble works. It asks you what language you speak, and it'll give you a little demonstration right off the bat. What you're going to need to do is you want to sign in immediately. And you're going to want to change that password. So change it to a new password. And there you go. You've already started your initial interview, so that's why that's there. But as you can see, now Docassemble is running. And you can switch over here, switch to the playground. What I like to do is I like to go ahead and add another user right off the bat, because right now the user is admin@admin.com, which is a fake user. So you go in and just add a new user, which would be to add an account for yourself. And when you add it, just create it with admin privileges. All right, so in addition to those things though, what I'm using Docassemble for is to access Microsoft SQL Server database and get information from the SQL Server database and use that information that's already stored in the cloud, use that data in Docassemble documents. These are these layers. And right now, we're in Docker, we're running Docassemble, but I want to add something to Docassemble. But to do that, I want to add it within that Python virtual environment. And I'll talk about that here in a second. So what I'm going to do first is I need to install the drivers, the ODBC, which is the driver that Microsoft uses to communicate with databases. I'm going to install those drivers inside the Docker container. I have gone ahead and I have gone to that website that tells you how to install the ODBC driver. For some reason, the driver 17 isn't working for Debian 8. So instead, what you're going to want to look for is you want to scroll down to the ODBC driver 13.1 and use instructions for that. So I've already done the first instruction. Let's get the second one. Okay, so at this point, I have gone through all the steps to install the ODBC driver for SQL Server onto my Docker container. All you do is you just copy and paste each one of these lines in, and when they're done, the driver should be installed. Now, remember, what we've done so far now is we've installed the driver onto the Docker container, but Docassemble itself is running inside a Python virtual environment. So the next step is I'm going to install a Python module that communicates with a SQL server that contains a SQL Server database that contains my data, but I'm not going to install it in the instance of Python that is just here in the Docker container, because if I do, then Docassemble, which is installed in the virtual environment, isn't going to be accessing that module. What we want to do is we want to install it into the Python virtual environment in which Docassemble is running. So there is a fantastic, super easy way to do that. And the module I'm going to be installing is pyodbc, Python ODBC, and I'm just going to copy that link address for where this is at in GitHub. I'm going to go over to Docassemble, and let's see, I believe it's in here. You can install or update a package. You're just going to paste that address there into the GitHub URL. Okay, and so then after a minute or so, it will say that it has updated the package and it was successful. So click on return. And what's neat is, if you look on here, this tells you all the different modules that are running. And we should have pyodbc. It is now installed. So, what we've got, I'm in Texas, and in Texas we've got 259 counties. I practice administrative law, and we have, I believe it's 13 different field offices that have to service the 259 counties in Texas. And so my practice entails a lot of PDF forms. You fill out these PDF forms, you send them in to Austin, to the state capitol, and you've got to tell them on the forms what field office is going to be handling your client's case, depending upon what county the client lives in. And so we have all that information stored already in a database. And here you go. Here is a SQL query that I wrote, and you can run it there, and you can see it's telling you that the client lives in Angelina County. The field office would be in Lufkin. And so we're going to come over here, and we're going to go to our playground. And if this is all set up correctly, all right, we're going to be able to do the same thing in a Docassemble interview. So what we want to do is we want to add a new routine here, a new little interview thing. I've already typed everything up, and let's test it out. So we're going to save it. Oops, I need to give it a name. And we'll save it. And now let's save and run. There we go. The answer is Lufkin. The answer is Lufkin. So I now have Docassemble installed. I have Docassemble querying a Microsoft SQL Server database that's also in the cloud and pulling information from that database and integrating that information into a Docassemble routine. So you could use this. The possibilities are endless. And that completes this video that shows you everything about how to install it and even how to be something of a power user and install additional things on top of the base install of Docassemble. Remember, I'm not a programmer, I'm just a lawyer, so please don't criticize me if I use the wrong terminology or if I did things the wrong way or whatnot. But I'm just showing how easy it is for non-programmers to get Docassemble up and running and to do some pretty incredible things with it. Thanks for watching.